it's horrific. We are, you know, there are points where because you can't comprehend, you can't make sense of something that seems so complex. Every day gets harder because the answers are just not coming.
A mother wrestling with multiple unanswered questions. Number one being, where is my 23-year-old son? But also dealing with this feeling that maybe law enforcement isn't doing everything that they can to be helpful in this situation. It's been almost 8 months since he went missing. It's time to turn on the searchlight for Jack O'Sullivan. Welcome back to Brain Scratch Searchlight. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today and for caring about these cases like I do. Before we jump into Jack's case, I just want to let you guys know about our friend Candace Cooley, the mother of Dylan Rounds. She and her organization are looking to help two other families in very similar situations to what Jack's family is. They've got a canine search planned for November of 2024 in Oregon. They're trying to finalize their fundraising, maybe get some more money in the kitty to help them with this effort. This is going to be an effort looking specifically for Michael Bryson and Shane Sprenger. Shane's case we actually tracked for a little while. I was getting ready to do a coverage on it, and then we heard that some remains have been found. Based on what Candace is telling me, it's very little remains. There's more to be found out there, and they want to bring some teams to do that. After months of planning, we'll be going to Oregon with canine teams from 3 different states to assist in trying to bring these families some peace. Please consider donating at the link below. Of course, we'll have a link in the description box below where you can make donations to this as well. And if you're curious about Michael Bryson's case, we actually have released an episode of Seriously Mysterious previously on that case, so I'll have a link to that down below as well. But now let's continue with our coverage on Jack O'Sullivan, and I just want to give a quick thank you to supporter of the channel, James Reed, for letting me know about this case. And basically he told me, he's like, John, this family needs help. They're just trying to keep the awareness raised to this case. So thank you so much, James. Where does this case take place? You might have caught an accent there. We are jumping across the water to England. And in particular, he goes missing in an area known as Hot Wells. It's a neighborhood in the English port city of Bristol. It's located to the south of and below the high ground of Clifton and directly to the north of the floating harbor. The southern entrance to the Avon Gorge, which connects the docks to the sea, lies at the western end of Hot Wells. So I'm sure that anyone that has watched this channel often enough knows that when I'm hearing about so many water features being in an area with a missing person, that brings a lot of concern. We know the statistics, particularly for young men, college-aged men that have been drinking and leave on their own. For some reason, there is a statistical spike all around the world with that particular situation. It's a dangerous, dangerous situation. In some of those cases, those missing people are found in the water. So of course we are always worried about that when we're talking about a case of this nature. But this case has some other features to it as well. We do have some cell phone information. We've got some social information about the party that he was at that we have to weave in. So a lot of considerations that we have to go through here. I want to start by saying whoever has pulled together the website for this movement, they're calling Find Jack, and there's also a Facebook page, which I'll have links to all of this down below. Whoever put together findjackosullivan.co.uk really did a bang up job on this. It is one of the best resources that I've seen pulled together in this way. And I'll tell you why. It's extremely concise. The information is just razor focused on this page. And because we're talking about a case where I don't have namists to lean on for the basics of the case, we're going to start at findjackosullivan.co.uk to get some of the basics. So at the time of his disappearance, he was 22 years old. He has turned 23 since. And basically he went missing March 2nd of 2024. His birthday was either later that month or early April right around that range there. So his family has already missed one birthday with him. Stands at 5 feet 10 inches tall. He's got a slim build, brown short hair, and blue eyes. There is a reward of 20,000 pounds sterling eligible for this. For circumstances, we're going to lean a little bit more on the articles, but this section I just have to once again call out, just so well thought out. We've got pictures of his clothing, or at least like models of his clothing, so we can see what's going on here. And he did have, we've got a sweater. He's also got a jacket on. And based on some of the news coverage that I've seen on this case, there was areas where in Bristol where it was even snowing on this particular night. So, outside of the fears that I have about water being a factor in this case, hypothermia could also be a factor in this case as well. And sometimes what happens is if someone is out there and they literally start freezing, they look for some place where they can keep warm. And in a lot of those cases, they will kind of burrow into something. And sometimes if they do expire in that situation, it makes them very, very tricky to find. Which is only adding another level of complexity to this case. But on top of the clothing that they have noted here, I don't think I've ever seen a website pull together this type of information. We've got representative images, so not perfect matches, but to give you a really good idea of what he had on him as well, other items that might be found out there. I think this is very, very smart. He had a black card holder. He had his driver's license. He had a black iPhone 11 in a red silicone case. He had a key fob for his car. I believe that was attached to his key ring, which did also have an AirTag. It's going to be another aspect we're going to talk about as we go through this case. Of course, he had a house key. He had an Armani watch. He had a debit card. Cards have not been used. Phone, we're going to talk about the activity on that. And of course, the AirTag we will get to as well. But let's start by trying to learn a little bit about Jack. I did find a Facebook page for him. It doesn't look like he used it a whole lot, but the ways he did use it, or one way in particular, pretty moving. September 18th, he talks about that he's taking part in a half marathon. Coincidentally, I literally just did one last weekend myself. He trained for this marathon and he did it to raise money to support a charity called Calm, and that was in honor of his friend Adam. Now, I don't know the exact details of what happened to Adam. It's pretty clear Adam passed away. Calm is a charity that effectively helps with people that might be thinking about self-harm or dealing with really hard situations around that. So I don't know if that's directly connected here, but he was looking to raise 1,000 pounds and crushed it. He wound up raising 2,000 pounds. And I also got to say, he crushed that half marathon. I saw his finishing time on it as well. And a picture from that event. So, but we learn here that he did study at the University of Exeter. He basically just graduated there in July of 2023 with a history degree. And then he came back to Bristol. He's living at home and he's continuing his education. He's decided he wants to get into law. So apparently they have some type of conversion education that you can do based off your pre-existing degree. I think you take additional classes and then you can go ahead and get a degree in law as well. So that's what he was working on. Outside of that, we can see he went to Clifton College, which the way it's listed in Facebook makes it look like that's actually his high school. But not a whole lot of other information around that. I do see some pictures here that I believe are his brother, Ben, who spoke in one article about how it really hit him that his brother was missing when a certain football game came on. They would basically root for different teams, and they loved watching that game together, I'm sure, because they were brothers and they were going to rib each other throughout that game. And unfortunately, Ben did not have Jack around for that this year. I did find a little more information at Sky News about his personality coming from his mother directly. Outwardly, to a lot of people, he'd be quite quiet, quite shy, really. Not a very outspoken person, but behind the scenes at home, he's the complete opposite, the life and soul of the house. A sport fanatic. Really, really loves his sport, loves his football, loves his golf, loves tennis, and really clever, very ambitious, very driven by anything he does. It has to be perfection. So I think we have a pretty decent idea of his character and a little bit about his background now. Let's get to the disappearance. Call it a mother's instinct. But when Catherine O'Sullivan woke in the darkness of a winter morning in early March this year, she was seized by an immediate sense that something was terribly wrong. I jumped out of bed and went straight to Jack's room, and it was exactly as we'd left it, she recalls. His light was on next to his bed, and the bed wasn't slept in. I ran downstairs, and when the door was still locked, I immediately went into a deep panic. That gut reaction proved to be the start of a spiraling nightmare that endures to this day. Continuing with coverage over at BBC, and this is coverage very early on. He was just missing about 10 days when this article came out. The parents of a missing 22-year-old man who failed to return home after a house party have appealed for information. His mom, Catherine O'Sullivan, said, "We just need to know where he's gone for our sanity. We've been able to ascertain his movements of leaving the party at around 2:53, and that'd be 2:53 a.m., seeing him attempt to stop taxis and Ubers and trying to get a lift on 2 occasions," she said. It's an interesting point that she's talking about there. Apparently, he took a bus to get to this area. He was going out with some friends earlier. They went to a place and had a couple drinks before this party. But this was kind of a late night already in terms of that start. And we'll get into a timeline that breaks all that down a little bit later. But apparently, he had been in this area frequently and never had a problem getting a taxi. But outside of that, he has his cell phone. His cell phone seems to be working. If he wanted an Uber, why couldn't he just call for one? Was there something else that was going on here? So just some interesting considerations. We also have law enforcement release an image that they believe could be him walking on CCTV. And this is, you can see on the clock up here. I know the date looks funky for us in the US, but this is March 2nd, 2024. And this should be around 5:38 a.m. There's a little tiny red arrow in the back, and they are under the belief that that could be him back there walking. Mrs. O'Sullivan said that she had waited up for her son but fell asleep after receiving a text from him at 1:52, assuring that he would find an Uber home. At 3:24, Mr. O'Sullivan had attempted to make a call to a friend who was still at the party. Now, that's actually talking about Jack. For some reason, when I first read that, I thought they were referring to his father because they referred to his mother as Mrs., but they're talking about Jack there. When the friend called back 10 minutes later, Jack answered, but only managed to say hello before the line went dead. His phone remained active on the Find My Friends app up until 6:44. So it seems like his family had some form of tracing in terms of where his phone was located through all that. But of course, we're talking about a missing persons case, and there is a possibility that that phone gets separated from the person at some point. So keep that in mind as we kind of try to stitch together the information that has been released on this. On Friday, March 8th, police divers were seen searching the River Avon, but it has not been confirmed whether it was linked to the missing 22-year-old. That would later be confirmed. They were indeed searching the water for him. On Friday, March 8th, police divers were seen searching the River Avon, but it has not been confirmed whether it was linked to the missing 22-year-old. We just want to know why that phone was still active because it doesn't fit with anything else that we have to go by. And that is another quote from his mother. And a picture of the family here, certainly in happier times. So let's take a look at this area and get a little lay of the land here. Effectively, we've got this area. This is the Avon Gorge. This is the Clifton Suspension Bridge. And he was at a party kind of in this neighborhood. And he left here and he goes walking off and somehow winds up, I don't know, the path that we're going to be able to stitch together makes me wonder if he was feeling okay. Maybe he had a little too much to drink. Maybe there was something else that was going on, but the path does not seem very direct. His home is about 5 miles west and south of this. He would have effectively, if he was going to walk the 5 miles, which, he can run a half marathon. Could he walk 5 miles? Certainly. Even if he took that up to a light jog, he could do that in about an hour. I don't think you'd want to do that in the middle of the night, especially if it was a cold evening like this was. But if he would continue on this A370, that would get him going in the direction of where his family lives in this area. Flaxbert out here. Let's get some more detail on where he was seen, though. He had attended a birthday party in Hot Wells and was last seen at about 3:15 on Saturday, March 2nd in the area of Brunelloch Road and Brunel Way. So back to the map, we zoom in on almost, it looks kind of like this island offshoot in the middle of the River Avon here. Brunelloch Road is here, and Brunel Way, here it's actually got it listed as something else, but here's Brunel Way. So the cross section of that is right around this area, and that's where he was last seen. What's strange about that is the walking pattern. He came from up here, down Christina Terrace, which turns into Merchants Road, it looks like. So he kind of is almost doing a U shape and walking around this area known as the Cumberland Basin. As a matter of fact, some of the other information makes it look like he might even be kind of heading back north again when he gets over on this side, but let's not jump ahead. They do have a timeline that they've put together over at findjackosullivan.co.uk. Let's just run through that real quick. So at 1 a.m., he messages his parents with the plans about him getting a taxi or an Uber. At 3:17, we have the last confirmed sighting of him on CCTV, and we do have still images of all those CCTVs. He's walking onto the grass area at the junction of Brunelloch Way and Brunel Way. 3:24 is when the phone call happens. It is Jack trying to call his friend. It's a female that is back at the party still. 3:25, likely sighting of Jack on the Plimsoll Bridge heading towards Bristol City Center. 3:30, that friend at the party tries to call him back, hears the word hello, and then the call is disconnected. 3:39, Jack is seen walking along Bennett Way. 3:40, he's seen on CCTV walking up Bennett Way Slip Road, headed towards Hot Wells. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's almost like a U shape, like he's going back up to where he came from. Not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, maybe he was going for a walk to cool down. Maybe it wasn't his intent to actually leave the party at that time. I mean, sure, he spoke to his mother at 1 o'clock and said, okay, I'm going to get a taxi from here, but that doesn't mean, okay, I'm leaving right now. So did something happen at the party? Was there some reason why he was taking a walk to cool down? And then 5 a.m., Jack's parents notice he wasn't home. 5:40, his phone places him at an address in the Granby Hill area. That area, once again, is even further north from these sightings that we're seeing down here. Granby Hill is up over here. So it does seem like he's doing a big U shape. 6:44, Jack's phone remained active on the network until this time. Now, they've also put their version of the map together. So the party was up here at Hotwell Road. We can see he walked down Merchants Road, and then the first pickup is at 2:53 of him walking here right before the Junction Swing Bridge. There's another sighting of him at 2:57. We can see it looks like he's walking this way. There's a sighting of him at 3:08 as he gets close to Brunel Way. There's another sighting of him at 3:17. Now, those sightings up to 3:17 are basically confirmed by law enforcement. They know that's him. They're tracking him. The time makes sense. The 3:25 sighting, which certainly in terms of the time seems to make sense, is questionable. And I think it's questionable because of the distance. We'll take a look at that one in a minute. The 3:39, also questionable, once again, because of the distance. You can kind of see it just in this one. I mean, it's a very far shot. But those sightings are really, really important in terms of the timeline because of what's going on with his phone. At some point, he's trying to call that friend, and that's supposed to be around this kind of 3:25 range. And then the friend calls back very soon after that. So if this is him, if this sighting is accurate, it's within 5-6 minutes after this that the friend calls back, hears hello, and then that's it. Now, there's another important point about that we'll get to as we continue here, but let's take a look at the photos that they've got of each individual sighting. This one, I think it'd be very hard, not especially for a family member, to look at and be like, oh yeah, that's him. And keep in mind, we're looking at still images. They have full footage where the image probably looks a bit better when it's in motion than in stills like this. But confirmed sighting. This one also a confirmed sighting. once again, like these are very, very clear. And this one too, this one's even in color, and you saw the clothing that he was wearing. Like that's pretty much a match for the clothing that we were seeing as well. This one, not in color, black and white, very, very far. The timing seems to make some sense. But we have him crossing a bridge, possibly him. I just want to keep that in mind. And then here. And again, this one, it's hard because it is so far away. But the color of the clothing compared to the one that we saw a few ago, it doesn't strike me as necessarily a match. That kind of brown that he's wearing, at least the light seems to be picking that up, his brown jacket, pretty strongly. Or I'm not even sure, that could be the sweater that he had on under that. Maybe he's got his jacket tied around his waist or something. I'm not sure. But based on the image of him I'm seeing here, I'd be very surprised to see one that's this dark out here. It's possible. I mean, it's possible he's completely backlit there, that the only source of light's coming from the other side, so it's just casting all shadow on that side. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that one. Continuing at bbc.com, last confirmed sighting is 3:13. New footage shows a possible sighting of someone walking over Plimsoll Bridge at about 3:25, followed by someone walking along Bennett Way at 3:38. And I'm just trying to highlight for you guys that, and there's numerous articles that do this. They're just being very clear. Confirmed sightings up until 3:13. 2 sightings after that, they're not sure of. I have seen later statements, like a few months after this information came out, where law enforcement is saying they believe that it's possible it could be him and those others as well, but it is not confirmed. What was law enforcement saying at this time? Detective Inspector Jason Chidgey said, "This is an extremely distressing time for the loved ones of Jack, and we're continuing to carry out urgent inquiries to establish what happened to him. We're keen for the public to focus on the time of the last confirmed sighting, and we still want to speak to anyone driving on the Cumberland Basin around this time, as well as anyone driving outbound towards Ashton, as they may have dash cam footage, which could help us. We previously issued a CCTV image showing a person in Hotwell Road at around 5:40 a.m. the same day. Remember that first image that I showed you? Following further inquiries, we've now established that this was not Jack." So the very first image that I showed you guys from one of the earlier news articles on this case, this one here, not him. And what's interesting about that is they're very clear that it's not him. And this one still occasionally pops up in places. The only reason why I think that's harmful to this case is because of this time frame. It's putting him somewhere at 5:40. And you guys have heard my speech about it already. Last confirmed sighting we have of him is actually around 3:14. We're in daily contact with Jack's family to keep them updated on the progress of our investigation and to ensure they have the help and support that they need. I can tell you they don't feel like that currently, but of course, we see this trend with families that have missing loved ones. After a few months, most families fall to a position of feeling like law enforcement isn't being as helpful to them as possible. There's some particular details in this story, though, that might make you think twice about it, not just being the normal conditions that we usually see with this. Why, oh why, is his phone still in use over 2 hours after we saw him on CCTV footage? A big question that his mother is struggling with through this period. At 3:24, he had attempted to make a call to a friend who was still at the party, but when the friend called back 10 minutes later, Mr. O'Sullivan answered, but only managed to say hello. Why am I reading the same thing to you guys again? I want to point out how this is phrased because I'm seeing it phrased like this very consistently through most of the articles, if not all of the articles that I've read that happened within the first 6 months. They're all assuming that Jack actually answered and that it's Jack saying hello. We don't know that. There's a possibility that he's walking home. He decides to call his friend. They don't answer. Maybe he goes to put the phone back in his pocket. It slips. It drops on the ground. Someone picks it up after that. Something along those lines. There's some possibility that he separates from the phone. And in that, there's a possibility that the person that says hello might not necessarily be Jack, but for some reason, all of the articles are leaning on this very, very hard, this particular phrasing. So I just want to call that out. We don't know where that phone separates from him. And to the point of the title of this article, why is his phone still in use over 2 hours after we saw him on CCTV? It would make sense if someone else picked up the phone. If we're talking about a situation where something happened to Jack, if he did happen to wind up in the water or something like that. And I think that's the core of the question. I can't speak for her, but I assume that's the core of the question that his mother's struggling with. Law enforcement's probably telling her, hey, look, we know the odds on something like this. There's a very good chance that he's in the water. And she's probably coming back with, well, then why is the phone still in use for hours after that? And not just that it's pinging, it's actually in use. We're going to find out in some of the later articles, there's a bunch of data that hits the phone at one point, almost like a video maybe being watched or a bunch of searches being done, something like that occurs. There's a spike in data that happens with the phone. So it's a possibility that I want to make sure that we're all open to as we're trying to go through this. Please share this far and wide. We just need help in getting this message across. We must get an answer to be able to put one foot in front of another and move forward. Please help us, says his mother. And I'm sharing this stuff. I am not trying to say that I know the answers. I do not know the answers. I wish I could tell them where Jack was. I just know previous things that we've looked into. I know statistics on some of these instances. I know which way it's leaning, but that's still not the answer. And, to the point of his family and more current comments, here we are coming up on 7 months later, nothing has been found. Even if he did fall into the water, like absolutely nothing. We know about the mystery over here in the US around the Seattle area where shoes keep washing up. It's because of bodies that have wound up in the water sources out there, and the shoes float and the shoes keep showing up. Where's his shoes? Where are his items? All those items that were on his person. Nothing has been found. And they've been doing a pretty good job in terms of the awareness. I saw a video of someone doing a walkthrough of the actual footpath. I didn't find it super helpful, but what was clear was there was signs about Jack all over that area. All over the bridge. There was, big giant signs. They're definitely keeping the awareness raised there. I would think that if an item of his was found, a jacket that someone didn't possibly recognize, maybe, could they have picked that up and thrown that in the trash, not knowing how important it was? Possibly. But there's certain other items, an Armani watch, some things like that. I would like to hope that if someone found an item like that and they knew about this case, that they would come forward about it. I want the world to try to give me an answer to where Jack is. It's horrific, said his mother. There's his mother and father. The family has been out many times in the night searching for him and retracing his last known steps. It just doesn't add up. We were very shocked to see how well lit the area was in the middle of the night. I am too, just from the images we saw of the CCTV. There's a lot of lighting in that area. I was expecting it to be really dark and then to think, well, someone could trip, but it's lit up like the middle of the day, Mrs. O'Sullivan said. Not just that, but I've looked at some ground level pictures and footage of it. And even the areas that are close to water, or especially the footpaths that are on the bridges going over, they've got fences. Now, not fences that are 10 feet tall, but fences that would certainly stop most people from tripping and falling into the water, like rail height at a minimum. So it is kind of odd. I didn't really see any particular areas that looked, at least for the path that we believe that he took, I didn't see any kind of danger zones about like, oh, this spot, this is where someone could have fallen into the water. And law enforcement has said they have talked to certain experts about the flow of the water. We know that they've had divers in there. So they are kind of taking that angle into consideration in the early part of the investigation here. And of course, not coming up with anything. Specialist officers have carried out a significant number of searches in the area with support from the dive team, drones, and dogs. Public awareness is key to this case, said Detective Inspector Chidgey. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure everyone knows about this case. If you have friends in the UK, please share this video with them. Take a moment, just hit that share button, and let's try to help them in terms of keeping the awareness raised. Missing son's birthday was hell on earth. So we know just a matter of about 3-4 weeks after he disappears, his family is dealing with his birthday without him there. The Welsh mum of a man missing since attending a party has been going to the spot where he was last spotted every day for the last month. Speaking at the site of Jack's last confirmed location, Senior Investigating Officer Detective Inspector Jason Chidgey said, "We're keeping an open mind about where Jack is, but this is very out of character for him, and we've been working hard to track his movements that night. Detectives have carried out extensive CCTV trawls, house-to-house inquiries. We've deployed a specialist dive team to search the basin and the wider River Avon due to Jack's proximity to the river when he was last seen, and have been looking at his phone and why that was active after his last confirmed sighting." So sounds like his mother's message getting through to them. He said that the last place Jack was spotted was unusual because it was between two buildings and it would have been dark and cold at the time. So again, that's just making me wonder about that possibility. He's talking about this image. Between two buildings, like if it's starting to get cold out there, I don't know if there's a wind that's happening off the water, but if there is and it's starting to get chilly, maybe you would cut between two buildings to try to, get into a windbreak of some kind. That could be showing some intent that he's having to try to find a place where he can warm himself up. And here at The Independent, parents reveal one item which could provide key to finding missing son. It's an item that most of us think about when it comes to missing persons cases nowadays. Catherine said finding his phone would give police an indication of where he disappeared. This is a very frustrating aspect of this case because they have the Find My Family feature on. They're able to relay that information to law enforcement. From what I understand, law enforcement actually pinpoints a particular address. I believe they go and they talk to someone at that address, but then that's it. And the phone hasn't been recovered. So it's strange to me that we have so much. Usually we don't have information even close to that for trying to trace a phone. It's just like the phone signal dies and then that's it. We have no idea where it is. They have more information about the phone location here than I've seen in most cases, and we still don't have the phone. I mean, even if it wound up with someone that was wanting to resell it or something like that, every phone has a unique ID built into it at this point. If that thing hits the network and it's been flagged to do so, it should notify law enforcement that it's back on the network, and then they could trace it back that way. So if someone out there is thinking, it's the cell phone for that kid that's missing, I'm going to go sell this thing. Don't feel so safe doing so, because basically all that's going to happen is you're going to sell it. Someone's going to put a SIM card in it. It's going to hit the network again. Law enforcement's going to find out about it. They're going to find out where the person got it from, go back to the pawn shop, ask if they have footage. Like they're going to trace it back the other way to get it back to who had the phone, especially if we're talking about a situation where foul play is suspected. So it's bizarre to me that we have this aspect to this case where so much information about the phone, but the phone not being found. It just doesn't make any sense, his mother said. My appeal really would be if somebody picked up a phone for whatever reason or passed a smashed phone or anything that would give us an indication of where that phone went. Law enforcement basically tells Catherine, we've done everything we can with the phone. They have a process out here. I wish we would hear about these types of processes here in the US. After 28 days, there's a peer review where basically some of the bosses of these investigators take a look and say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you tried that? So they have some questions kind of circling around, like, are there other things that we can do with the phone? And the family's waiting to hear back more about those potential options at this point. This article also confirms that they heard from the provider that phone was still on the network at 6:44 a.m. We know that there are periods of data usage, but they can't confirm what the usage might have been. It goes up at 5:45 in the morning. There is a big time gap between him and being cited to that point, and we're aware that he might not have had his phone. So here we're at least having the family be open to that possibility that he's separated from the phone at this point. And I've seen it described that the data usage is equivalent to a like a 9-minute video being watched. The family had used a Find My Phone app, which provided an approximate location. However, the police were initially unable to search the address it showed due to lack of evidence. They didn't initially go there because they said they had no evidence as Jack wasn't cited there, which was very frustrating for us, she said. Certainly, but I do appreciate that, this isn't necessarily a criminal investigation at this point. It's a missing persons case. You would like to think that they would go to the location, at least knock on the door, try to talk to the person, try to feel out, is there some potential that the person actually does have it? I don't think, it might not even be considered theft. Like if he dropped it along the walk somewhere and someone picks it up, that's still not a crime either. So I understand that there's challenges in terms of, they can't go to the house and then search the house and say, we know that the phone is here. I know the family wants action at that level. And of course, we want them to have Jack back. So I understand the urgency around that, but I also understand the challenges. So as the investigators kind of start ramping down, of course, the community starts ramping up. We have a community search party that's held. We can see a bunch of amazing people out there, boots on ground, looking for Jack. And we also have some comments here. Margaret Ahern, who lost her son at age 23, added, "I'm doing it for the family of Jack, and we just hope we find something belonging to him. I know how his family must be feeling." Also, one of Jack's friends, Xavier Placier, said he was genuinely the nicest guy I've ever met. He could speak to anyone about anything. Mrs. O'Sullivan, his mother, says that she always leaves an outdoor light on just in case he comes home. That might seem a bit bizarre to some people, but I think as a mother, you'd get it, she said. A few months into his disappearance, law enforcement is starting to try to be clear with the public about everything they've done. More than 1,000 taxi drivers have been contacted by the police. We know that Jack's intent was to get a taxi, so they're being a little proactive there, trying to reach out to people. A new CCTV clip showing a member of the public walking a dog near the Brunel Swing Bridge at 4:30 has also been released. They're describing them as wearing a green padded jacket with a fur-lined hood and walking a black dog with a red collar. We actually have a picture of that footage here. I haven't seen any follow-up on this. I've seen a few mention of them putting out that they're looking for this person. I don't know if they've actually found this person. I haven't seen anything that kind of wraps that up. Officers are also proactively contacting registered keepers of vehicles who were seen driving in the area. So it sounds like they're looking through the CCTV, looking at the registration tags, and then contacting those people and asking about this case in particular. So some work that they're doing a few months into it. But, it seems like their options are starting to run thin, and they're starting to kind of play the long shots. And by the time we get to June, parents file complaint against the police. His parents say their ordeal has been made much worse by Avon and Somerset Police, which is responsible for finding Jack, and they have lost all faith in officers' attempts to locate him. CCTV was missed. Jack's family say that mistakes were made early on in the search for him and say that CCTV footage placing him in a different location at a different time was initially missed. So I'm not sure exactly what footage they're talking about there. And unfortunately, it doesn't get very clear. I've looked at several articles about this and I can't really get this cleared up. But it was found by Jack's mom, Catherine, when she was allowed to view some of the footage for herself. To have footage of my son in their possession the day after he was missing and for someone not to see that is just ludicrous, she said. And we have to live with that, thinking that would have possibly been different here if on that second day, the whole world knew he was there and we could have appealed to people. It's making it sound like it's a full day after. So I'm really surprised because even the website, I'm not seeing mention of that, the Find Jack O'Sullivan Missing website. So I'm not sure about that information. It's also interesting to me that we have BBC reporting on this. They're hearing those kind of details, but we're not really getting the picture from it. I don't know. His brother, Ben, says, "We've been told for weeks and weeks that there's the possibility of the National Crime Agency helping and providing their resources, but despite asking, there has still been no progress. I've been trying my best to help, but I'm the first to admit I'm not a tech expert, and you would hope that Avon and Somerset would have the resources for me to not be involved." Yeah. The family was also distraught to find out last week that an administrative error within the police force meant that Jack had not been added to the National Missing Peoples Register until he had been missing for more than 2 months. Now that is terrible. The errors that have cast so much doubt in our mind about what was done, when it was done, and whether it continues to be done has caused us untold damage, says Catherine O'Sullivan. A spokesperson said, "We fully recognize the distress and anguish this has had on Jack's family, and our thoughts remain very much with them. We're determined to do all that we possibly can to find the answers they so desperately need." But we've officially hit that point with this missing persons investigation where the family probably not getting along very well with law enforcement. They do start taking even more matters into their own hands. There is a GoFundMe that's run. It generates a lot of money, and they start using that money for their own efforts, including offering a 20,000 pound sterling reward. On top of that, getting a detective, starting to get some experts to help them as well. And they also noted here that if the reward money goes unclaimed, they're actually going to donate it to the charity Missing People, which we've supported here on the channel before as well. They do a bunch of great work out there, and it's almost like a fusion of what we have here as NamUs and kind of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you kind of fused those two things, that's pretty much what you have with charity, with the charity Missing People. So now the family has some resources. They're starting to use these avenues of investigation of their own, including reaching out to Apple about maybe some data that could help solve this mystery. And there it is in the photo. What about that AirTag? Let's learn more about this angle. 6 months on, Catherine believes that data from the AirTag could solve the mystery of Jack's disappearance. It is interesting to me because the AirTag is on his keys. There seems to be a strong possibility that he got separated from his cell phone. But if his keys are still on him, that would give us another trackable item that could help determine where he is. Now, from what I understand, we've had AirTags come up in a few cases at this point. They don't broadcast their own signal. So it's not the type of thing where the AirTag is going to be pinging the whole time and let you know, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. They're a device that uses other Apple products that are in the area that have internet access. And those products have to be enabled to help with AirTags, basically. But so effectively, if an iPhone gets close to his AirTag, then his AirTag will jump the signal for that iPhone and send a ping back and say, I'm here. So it's not quite as solid as a cell phone in terms of tracing. But to the point of like, if he was dealing with hypothermia and he did hunker down somewhere and he wound up, behind a dumpster or in a bush or something like that, and you have all these searchers that are out there looking for him, if they have iPhones and they go walking by that area to the tune of, I think about at least 30 feet, it's typically 30 feet for those types of communications, that would be enough for that signal to get through and give its location. So definitely some potential here, but as with a lot of things in this case, there's also some hard to understand challenges around it. The mom said cops told her that they couldn't access the tracker because of privacy laws. She told the Mail, we just thought that's ridiculous. We asked a legal friend of ours and they said, no, that's rubbish. The family pressed cops only to be told that the AirTag was not transmitting data because its battery was flat. Catherine dismissed the claim, pointing out that the AirTag had been charged before Jack went out at 6 p.m. Now, AirTags, you don't typically recharge. It's like a watch battery that you use in those, but that battery lasts for like 12 to 18 months. So you don't need to recharge it that frequently. I think something much more likely is that the tag is out of range of products that could use that it, the signal that it needs to basically send that ping back. If he did wind up in the water and we don't have someone in an iPhone that's riding around in a boat, that happens. And who knows, depending on the depth, how that signal is going to travel. That could be the challenge there. It seems to me that it's more likely that the AirTag is just not within range. I would say that's more likely than, the battery that's supposed to last for 18 months is just, it just went out. I don't think that's quite possible. His mom said that Apple experts told her that the AirTag would send a phone notification even if its battery actually was running low. But cops then claimed the AirTag had not been set up correctly and had not been registered. Catherine said, "We're going around on this ridiculous circle of not getting anywhere." Cops said they could not access the AirTag data because the tracker had been registered to an account owned by Jack's ex. But last weekend, Jack's ex confirmed to Catherine that this was not the case. So this is what makes it really hard for these families where, things might be getting a little contentious between law enforcement and families in a situation like this. And then you have law enforcement telling you these things and you're finding out, well, that can't be true. Oh, we went and talked to the ex. No, they said that's not true. I can see why there's some really tough feelings going on around this. His mom said, "We're just trying to get to the bottom of it because to me, this is such an important thing. And I know it was working. So where on earth is it? That's what we want clarity on." Also, just because I don't have an iPhone, I looked into the process of actually, matching it up to your phone, enabling it effectively. Ridiculously easy, super, super easy. So to think of a 22 or a 23-year-old getting something, which by the way, I guess Jack actually put it on his keys because I believe his father had lost some of his keys. And those current key fobs can be really, really expensive if you need to replace those. They could be a couple $100 to more. They could be several $100s. I guess that happened to his dad. So he decided rather than have that happen to me, I'm going to get an AirTag and I'm going to put that on my keychain. So it'd be kind of strange to me that someone that age and an Apple user wouldn't know that, oh, I've got to link this up with my phone. I'm pretty sure most people would know that. If he had gone into the water, people with experience have told us you should have found him by now, or found something at least, some evidence he was in the water. However, there's been nothing. You can see from the CCTV, it is not possible he fell into the floating harbor. The footage is quite good. Beyond where he was seen, there is a lock, but the harbor master told us if he had fallen in there, they would have found something. They don't have anything, and police divers have been in on many occasions. They found a wedding ring, glasses, football boots. So it feels like they have worked through it in good detail, but they found nothing that belongs to Jack. The only thing I want to point out about that comment is it's one thing to find items just in general that you're not looking for, as opposed to something very specific that you're looking for. And especially metal items like wedding ring or glasses. I don't know if on these dives, if they're using metal detectors. I would think that they might be, especially knowing that he has some metal on him. So finding those kind of things, I don't know. That's not, in my mind, that's not necessarily a dismissal. And we know from talking to search experts that you can never be 100% sure. You can search an area several times or have different people search it. And then someone goes back to that same area 2 or 3 years later, and they're the one that makes the magic discovery. That's just the reality of these types of searches. Add to that the complexity of it potentially being in water where effectively items can move and things are even more complex. I mean, this is a mother that is clearly trying to hold on to hope. I think the question I would be saddled with personally is, if my son was able to, would he have reached out by now? Would he have communicated with us in some way? And to know that that hasn't happened, then the next line of questioning for me would be, would there be someone that wanted to harm him for some reason? And in this particular case, that's a challenging prospect as well, because we have him captured on footage from place to place to place, and he's alone. So unless there's some compelling social information about what happened at that party, and even then, it's still tough because we have him leaving the party, unless he did circle back to it, which I can't rule out. Like, based on that path of travel, did something happen there that he was just taking a walk to cool off? The police seem to have based all searching on looking where his phone was last used. It doesn't mean to say that he was with his phone. So clearly the family getting a very solid grip on that possibility that he wasn't with his phone. There is a huge suggestion he was not with his phone, and they have to look everywhere. We feel the police have not put any effort into anything that was not around their water theory. We firmly believe any opportunity to search should have been done. Recently, a carrier bag was found floating in the water, so a team was sent to check it out. Anything on land seems to be a lot harder and has to be put for consideration, is what they're saying. And that's unfortunately true too. Unfortunately, land will wind up being privately owned by people. And with that, there's a lot of limiting factors when it comes to law enforcement. Water, you don't typically have that same thing unless you start getting close to the coast where someone might have a piece of land and they own a particular, dock or jetty or something like that. But in general, water is kind of easier for law enforcement to search on because you don't need to write a warrant. You don't really need, you might need cooperation with some other entities, but little more than that. On land, yeah, you've got privacy issues, ownership issues, all kinds of stuff. New area of interest identified. So like I mentioned, the family starts doing their own things. They bring in a specialist dog team to retrace the areas. And his mother says that 3 dogs became agitated at one location on the A370 bypass. So remember before when I was showing you that route that if he was going to walk home, he would likely take the A370. They're saying somewhere along this route, they had the dogs act strange. Now, they're not being very clear, at least I'm not understanding, unless they're saying like this bridge. Yeah, that's not even the A370 up here. One other comment I saw from her made it sound like it was only a few miles from their home, which would have meant somewhere around here. And could he have gone that far? Sure. Could he have dropped his phone up there, kept walking, and then come down here south, and then something happened down here? Absolutely. We can't say that's not possible. So they hand that information off to law enforcement, and effectively law enforcement tells them we don't have the resources to process this. So they find something they believe is a lead, try to hand it off, and they can't get law enforcement to act on it. So I know I've been alluding to this social information. What exactly happened at this house party? We have a bit of a timeline here. So he took the bus from his house to Bristol City Center to have drinks with 3 of his university friends at Wetherspoons before all 4, 2 boys and 2 girls, ventured to a house party hosted by a girl on his law conversion course. The University of Exeter graduate who had moved back to Bristol for the law course stuck with his group at the party on Hotwell Road, but at one point tumbled down the stairs and hit his head. Now, that's already important in one way because that footpath that we're seeing on the map, I'm wondering if something's up with him. Maybe it's not a matter of him drinking too much. Maybe he hurt himself really bad with that head injury, but there was certainly another aspect to it. When a random partygoer joked about him having too much to drink, Jack shoved him in a brief clash, but this did not go further. Jack texts his mom at 1:52 saying he was safe and he planned to get a taxi, and he left the party an hour later without saying goodbye to his female friend who was having a cigarette outside. So sounds like there was some little thing that happened at the party, but again, we have all that footage of him walking on his own outside of the possibility that he effectively did a boomerang and went back to the party and then something happened there. I'm not feeling very strong that the party is really tied to this, or the possibility that the head injury was more than we're considering and something really bad happened around that. Catherine described how Jack's friend had gone out to have a cigarette while Jack stayed inside, but when she returned, he had left. Jack's friend thought it was a bit strange he left without saying goodbye because Jack isn't that sort of person, really. Once again, this is making me wonder if, he falls down the stairs, he's a little embarrassed. This guy makes fun of him. He shoves the guy. He goes for a walk to cool down, intending to come back. We have his friend literally saying he didn't say goodbye. Catherine continued, so she went to look for him, but she couldn't find him anywhere, and I think she started messaging him and saying, "Where are you?" He then rang her, but she didn't answer the call. She said she had a problem with her phone. She was trying to answer it, but it wouldn't connect. And then about 10 minutes later, she calls him back, and we hear the hello. Now, this is his mother. My question is, was it Jack that answered? So finally, we have someone asking. This has been like the number one question for me since the first article I read on this. But again, nobody can be accurate with that. She thinks it was Jack, but he just said hello and he didn't say anything else. And that was at 3:35 a.m. Her account is that the phone line remained open for about 58 seconds. So even that's different than the previous explanations we heard. Previous explanations were he says hello and the line cuts. She's saying that no, it actually remained open for almost a minute. She didn't hear anything else in the background. She didn't hear vehicles or anything going past or the sound of any other person. And then the line cut out. So the line was open for almost a full minute. All the calls she made after that were not answered. And of course, we have to keep in mind, she's saying, my phone was acting weird. She was having trouble answering his call earlier. So even this, the way it's acting with the line staying open, could that be that her phone is kind of falling out of coverage? Catherine also revealed how the family has instructed lawyers to apply for a court order to get Jack's phone data from mobile provider EE. This is a weird twist in this story too. His mother actually pays for that phone, but they couldn't get the data from the company. So effectively, they bring a lawyer in and start pressing that way. We know that at 4:39, the phone was using equivalent data to a 9-minute video. We know that the messages I sent to that phone at 5:40 were received by that phone. And we know that the phone was still on until 6:44, and then it stops. Thankfully, they do get that data. So finally, we have a bit of a positive step for the family. But as with everything else in this case, there's still another hangup. The mom of missing Bristol student Jack O'Sullivan has thanked the phone company EE for handing over data about his phone. The data is now being sent to a cyber forensic company hired by the family, which will analyze the contents. We just need to be able to rule things in or out, his mother is saying. We don't know what it will tell us or if it will help us, but we need to know. Sounds like everything's on the right track, right? Not quite, because there's another component that they need to analyze that data, and the police have it. Police chiefs have told the family and friends of Jack O'Sullivan that they can't legally share phone data with them, which shows roughly where the missing student went on the night he disappeared because it will breach data protection laws. That's still strange to me, considering that his mom is actually paying for that phone. I wonder if there's something about the privacy issues that if someone else is using it, that they actually own the data on the phone because it's private information. It's information about them in particular. I don't know. Frustrated families said they're now having to commission their own radio frequency survey to find out exactly where Jack's phone went that night and where it was when it sent a last signal to the network. But because it's been nearly 8 months, it might not be as accurate. So effectively, there's this other component that they need to do where they analyze the area, the radio frequencies in the area. It's measuring transmissions from the phone and matching them against call data to help determine where the phone was at any given time. That gets affected in terms of time. So the police did a snapshot close to when he actually disappeared. Now they're, 8 months after the fact, and they're going to go back and do another snapshot, and things in the area could have changed. The way that the signal is being picked up could change. And that means that the analysis would not be as solid as if law enforcement would just give them that component. A spokesperson for Avon and Somerset Police said that they did conduct the surveys, but it didn't shed any new light on what may have happened to Jack. And the police said they can't share the in-depth analysis because they're not allowed to. I don't think the family's asking for the in-depth analysis. They're asking for the raw data so that their team could analyze it. So I'm curious about the phrasing around that. And just again, we're talking about who would be able to use this data in a nefarious way? Radio frequency transmission data? Is that going to show a list of other people's phone numbers or something? Is there some kind of redaction that they can do to make that data usable by this private company, or even have some kind of contract that's formed with the private company that's doing this analysis and law enforcement saying, we'll do this analysis and we're going to provide the family with only information that is specific to his phone? Make some types of assurances here. It just, the family's asking, is law enforcement doing everything they can? And it's a really good question in this case. So what does Catherine think happened? Her most likely theory? And she says, I must stress there isn't any firm evidence to substantiate it, is that he got into a car, knowingly or unknowingly. a taxi, or maybe a car that he thought was a taxi, has taken him out of the immediate center and dropped him somewhere. It's really hard for me. This is the only thing I do. Every minute of the day when I'm awake, I'm looking for Jack, trying to make sense of it all and keep the momentum going. I'm not prepared to accept Jack is not here until someone gives me evidence of where he is. So she thinks he was picked up. I mean, is it possible he was taken out of the area? Yes, but then obviously that wouldn't be the end of the story. If someone took him somewhere else, he's still going to be free to contact his family, and that hasn't happened. So there would have been something else that happened around that. And it's not like this is a case where we have, people demanding a ransom or anything, right? Well, actually, the mom of missing Jack O'Sullivan has urged that someone knows something. She said, "I've been contacted by mediums telling me Jack has been held hostage, murdered, and giving me locations all over Bristol to go and look for him. I've had requests for payment so he could be released." She has had numerous ransom demands. "Please tell me what any normal, sane family do under these circumstances. Our son is missing, for God's sake. Why, oh why, isn't Jack's disappearance being treated with the respect it deserves?" Mrs. O'Sullivan also thanked people on social media for their ongoing support in the search for Jack. She said it's their only tool and has urged others to keep going and helping them find her son. Just keep our desperate plea to find Jack O'Sullivan on the tips of everyone's tongues. You are our only hope. Someone knows something. And she's talking about me, and she's talking about you. She's also talking about a great group of people that have been helping her over at the Find Jack Facebook page. She's commented about them publicly several times. And I could see, just in terms of the communication that happened and how it evolved over time with her understanding of the possibilities of the case, I can tell there's some good people that are talking to her about those possibilities. I believe they're part of this Facebook group. So if you would like to show your support, please come and join this group. It's got 75,000 members as of today. And I'm just really thankful that there's good people out there that are looking to help these families in these tough situations. I know some of these groups can sometimes get tough, particularly on Facebook. Some of them can roll into drama machines. Based on what I'm seeing so far with Find Jack, we've got good people. Honestly, it's almost like the family just has great luck when it comes to people on the social media front with the website design. They've got some good helpers with them. So I'm very, very thankful for that. So where is Jack? If you have information about him, of course, you can always call 101. And if you do, we want you to give the reference 522-405-5172. But if you do pass them information, please also send it to the family directly. findjack23@gmail.com. We've been rolling that address down below as well. Please send the information to both places, because we've clearly got a situation here where family is conducting its own investigation, has some good resources to do so. Law enforcement also doing their work as well. And hopefully these two groups will at some point meet in the middle. And hopefully that middle is where Jack O'Sullivan is. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. Please, again, share this video. If you can't help by sharing, please just take a second, hit the upvote if you liked it, hit the downvote if you didn't, leave a comment. All of that interaction tells YouTube to show this video to more people, and that's going to help the O'Sullivan family. That's what we're here to do today. So please take a moment to do that. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Have a nice weekend, and join us again next week right here on the Lord and Arts channel.